All right, we're back. Hopefully today is gonna go fairly quickly. At least for the video part. I'll do the oil change and stuff off because that's just an oil change. I ain't gonna bother videoing that, but we got to get for sure this fender off. Seat's got to come off. I'll get both 3-point arms off just to get them out of the way. And then once that's out, you don't got to obviously don't got to take the fender off to get that top cover off, but in order to get the 3-point quadrant and everything to slide out the side, the fender's got to be out of the way, because when it's narrowed up on 30s, there's not enough room to slide it all out the side. So if it was on a wider tread width, you wouldn't even have to screw with the fender, but and you need to remove, when it's on 30s, you have to have the fender off to get the rock shaft to slide off. So let me get the 3-point stuff off real quick, and then we will just start removing stuff. So as far as the seat goes, to make it easier, you take it off in pieces. There's these little stop blocks that bolt back here in the back of the rails to keep you from pushing the seat right out the back of the frame, and you take those out, and then you can just pull the seat right out the back of the frame. And you kind of got to do that. Well, I mean, you can get in here to wrench, but if you don't take that off, then it's hard to get to these 2 back bolts. So 2 bolts here, 2 bolts here, and then this comes off. And these 2 front bolts, the holes are through holes. They go right into the hydraulic reservoir. So it is advisable while you're doing your other stuff, before you pull the hydraulics apart, to run those bolts back in so that you don't knock any dirt down into the hydraulic unit. And you're going to want to do that so that you can blow all the dirt off the top of the hydraulic unit. Alright, fender's off. I need to make a set of telescoping legs for that thing. We never use it for anything heavy. Actually, it hardly gets used at all. Usually the only time it even comes down off the shelf is when we're working on a tractor. And, I mean, if we're picking engines and stuff, we use the forklift, so it ain't like it ever picks up a whole lot of weight. Usually it's for something like that fender where it's not really heavy, it's just really awkward and in a bad spot to try to get a hold of it by hand, so you're more using that for support than anything else. So it doesn't need these great big huge honking legs. And like to get that fender off, you run the other leg down, you end up right straddle center of the tire, so you're not in a good spot to lift that fender. So you got to run that leg up so that you can get the hook where it needs to be. And then it picks fine. You just got to stand back there on that back corner to counterbalance it, because that fender, I mean, it doesn't weigh shit. All the weight's right down here. But it's just awkward. So if I had a set of telescoping legs where you could like take this one and just run it, you know, stubby back here somewhere to keep it from rocking. But I digress. So with all that out of the way, we can get the hydraulic top cover off. So that's just a big ring of bolts. Can I get to everything? Looks like those might require a wrench, but I should be able to get to almost everything with an impact. There's three 3/8 bolts across the back, and then everything else is 5/16. That's the hydroelectric harness going up to the levers, which honestly could probably just be cut off, but we'll leave it for now. Okay, is that everything? 3 across the back there. Seems like there was one, maybe not. I thought there was one really long one that always gets missed, but maybe that's on the hydraulic unit itself, because I'm not seeing anything else. So, with any luck at all, she'll pop right off without much of a fight. Well, that was easy. Normally, where did I just had a private. There it is. Normally, they put up a little bit more of a fight than that, but I'll take it. And now's the messy part, because there's a port here, here, and here. Then that's where the hydraulic oil comes up from the hydraulic unit into the valve body, which is here. So now they're going to drain the oil. All right. Now it's got to lift it off of there and put it on the bench, and then we can investigate our levers. Alright, I don't see anything that's like immediately a smoking gun other than with the levers in line, like so. The paws are not in line, and this inside one right here is the one for the outside lever, which is the one that slipped. But the bolt's still in place. The washer that acts as the key is still in place. So I don't know if the keyway's washed out or what. We'll have to take it all apart, which is all that these both have to come off anyhow to slide that whole assembly out the side. So to do that, you just pull these two bolts. There's two bolts here, and you undo the adjusting rod / control rod for the 3-point, and then that all slides out the side. So let me go ahead and do that, and while I'm at it, I'm going to clean and scrape the gasket and get all this cleared up. So let me go ahead and do that, and then let me get it cleaned up, and then we'll pull this apart on camera, I guess. Alright, I already, just for the sake of speeding things up, I pulled the control link off for the 3-point, and I pulled the bolts out of the housing. So the only thing left is to undo the control forks for the remotes. And the trick here is to not drop anything down into the hydraulics. That's a little stuck. Okay, the bolt's fine. Get that washer out of there. And the washer's fine. And the keyway's not all washed out. Yeah, it might be just a little bit, but I don't think it would be enough to make that lever slip, at least not as far as it did. Oops. Nothing out of the ordinary on that one either. So now with those out of the way and all the bolts undone, we should just be able to give this a few love taps to break. Oh, I guess the gasket already broke itself. So this should just slide right on out the side like that. Okay, to take this down the rest of the way is pretty simple. The levers just pull out. And then this guy technically probably takes a special spanner wrench. It's a nut that preloads the friction disc on the 3-point quadrant. But channel locks do the job. Guess it's a good thing we're putting the friction disc on this thing, because that one's in 3 pieces with pieces missing. And once that falls out, the 3-point can just do whatever it willy-nilly wants. So, pulling the planer, not very good. And then there will be a seal in the end of this, which is what that little one is. And then there's an O-ring right in there that seals the big lever, or the inside lever up. So, let me go ahead and run all this stuff through the parts washer and get everything cleaned up. And we will go ahead and put it back together, because I don't see... It looks a little goofy, like somebody's been working on it at some point. Like they might have welded it up, but it's hard to tell. But either way, nothing's broke, so I don't know if that key slot's just a little. We can set the washer in it and see. If the key slot's just a little slopped out, then I guess it's one of them deals where it kind of is what it is. I mean, I'm sure you could fix it, but it'd honestly probably be easier just to buy a different lever if you needed to. Alright, everything's cleaned up, so the first thing we want to do before we go putting any new parts in is clean up the surface where the friction disc has to run. It's all rusty. Clean up the gasket surface while we're at it. Now, there's a 212 O-ring. That's what seals this shaft. And it goes back in here. It's a little bit of a pain because it's way back in there. Seal, which has been leaking. Actually, they've both been leaking. Generally, if they've never been changed before, you can pretty much guarantee that they're leaking, but the thing is, these cups will get so full of dirt that the dirt actually stops the leak temporarily. Well, doesn't stop it, it slows it down, so it's not as noticeable as if it was a big, uncontrollable. And there's nothing in here that's under pressure, it's all just holding back the oil sitting in the reservoir, so. You gotta make sure you get that seated all the way back in there. So usually you gotta tap on it with a socket. If you can find one. 1/2 inch deep well. Get that seated all the way back in there. There's also, I've never actually seen levers so whopped out that they need changed, but there's also bushings in here, and there's no bushing in there, that's just machine casting. So there are bushings in here for this lever to run on. I've never actually seen them so bad that they actually need changed. But if you have levers that are loose, you probably need to think about bushings. I've never seen levers that are loose. There's no pressure on them. There's not a whole lot of rotation there. The bushings are plenty oversized for the job they're doing, so. But now we can go ahead and put this back together. That's the new friction disc. And if you got a tractor that does a lot of 3-point work, I highly recommend, even if the friction disc is still appears to be good. If you've never physically changed it, don't know the last time it was changed or if it ever was changed at all, it's not that bad of a job. I highly recommend you just go ahead and pick a day and get all the parts around and change this friction disc, because if it does go bad, it basically renders the 3-point completely useless, because it won't hold position. It tries to go all the way up all the time. You have to hold the lever in position, because that's what happened when the 1800 was the first one of these that I ever did, because it broke out and it came out in 3 pieces, and the lever was just flopping around without that friction disc in there. It was completely and utterly useless. So it's not that bad of a job. It's a fairly cheap job. The parts aren't that expensive. So like I say, if you've got a tractor that does a lot of 3-point work, I highly recommend just going ahead and doing this, because it's an easy half-a-day job, really. It even on the 55 series uses the same friction disc, but on those, changing them is even easier, because you don't have to disassemble the whole tractor. You just take the on those, all you have to do is pull the console off to expose all the levers, and you can just undo the nut, pull the lever off, clean everything up, put a new friction disc in. And so, like I say, if you got a tractor that does a lot of 3-point work and you don't want to have a day where you need it and it goes down on you over something as stupid as a friction disc, just go ahead and do it. And as far as setting the preload on it, it's kind of a preference thing. Put as much on it as you feel like it needs. I'm sure that there's a specification in the manual, but I like to run them a little tight. Alright, once you got your friction disc set where you want it, you are better off to go a little bit on the tighter side than have it too loose, because once this is assembled, kind of one of the flaws in the design of this, if I had to say there was one, is that once this is all assembled, the levers cover up Actually, no, wait, hold on a second here. I guess I've never paid attention to that before. Maybe I'm wrong. I am. So, apparently, I honestly never paid attention that there was a second hole. If you do need to adjust this, there's a second hole in the bottom of this lever. You can get in there with a screwdriver and work it like a brake adjuster and tighten or loosen it. So, fun fact for the day. Guess I never even paid attention to that. Never had to adjust one, so. Of course, you could probably learn all this by looking in the manual too, but I've done this and I've taken these apart enough times I don't even get the book out for them anymore. All right, and with that, you've rebuilt the hydraulic quadrant. And then, to put it back on, you will need that gasket right there, or you can make yourself one. The new ones are shaped kind of oval like that. The original ones actually matched the full profile of this, but either way, they're not that hard to make if you just want to make one, but they're also not that expensive if you just want to buy one. So I'm going to look and see if it's going to be easier to leave this off to do the rest of what we need to do on that side of the tractor. But if not, I will go ahead and just put this back on. It's the reverse of taking it off. I don't really need to show it to you. And then we will tackle, at least get that rock shaft off and see if the seals I have are the right ones, because I just happened to be digging through my box of new seals and stuff and found 2 seals that I'm pretty sure, I don't know how I ended up with them or why I ended up with them, but I'm pretty sure they're rock shaft seals. So, when in Rome. Alright, quadrant's back together with the exception of the rod to control the 3-point. We'll do that in a little bit. First things first, this rock shaft, do this seal. Actually going to do 2 jobs in one here. In order to get this rock shaft off, I have to pull the PTO lever off because it's going to be in the way of letting it out to get off the shaft. And the PTO lever on this thing has always been loose. And can't really do anything to fix it because this pipe coming out of the hydraulic unit to go to one of the remote hoses is in the way of that bolt. So, since we're going to have to take the PTO lever off anyway, we got to take that pipe off. So if this is all going to be apart anyway, might as well see. Hopefully the threads aren't stripped out in that hole. Otherwise, this might get a little more complicated and it might be something we don't necessarily worry about today, but we'll see. Alright, PTO lever's off. So we'll be able to check them bolt holes out once this rock shaft arm's out of the way. So first things first, we got to get this big booger of a snap ring off. And then if you're lucky, these things are already loose, which if you got a tractor that the 3-point gets used a lot, chances are they're going to be loose. If you got a tractor where the 3-point has not been used a whole lot in recent times, they're probably going to be stuck. I I had one on the 1955 that was stuck when I did the rock shaft seals on it, and that was not fun. Come on. There she goes. Ever so slowly. Okay, let me clean this area up real quick. All right, rack shaft's off, everything's clean. I looked down in these bolt holes and checked the bolts out. Nothing appears to be messed up, so hopefully it's just a matter of chasing the threads and putting new bolts in it, and hopefully that takes care of the floppy PTO lever. As far as getting the seal out, I've had good luck just taking some sort of self-tapping screw and running through the casing of the seal, and there's nothing behind it except for casting, and then there's a bushing that's neck down that the shaft runs on, but you're not going to run into it. So I've had good luck just running a screw in, letting it bottom out on the casting, and usually it'll actually just draw the seal out. I checked the seals that I have. The part number doesn't match, but the AGCO parts book still shows an old A suffix number. So it would have, by now, superseded to something else, but I pulled one out of the bag and stuffed it on the shaft, and it looks right. So I guess it will or it won't. I might have to pre-drill that, because technically this is a self-tapping wood screw. I was just hoping it would go. We don't have any actual self-tapping. At least I don't think we do. At least if we did, we wouldn't have any long ones, but we don't have any self-tapping like sheet metal screws. So we'll just take a little drill bit and poke a hole for that thing to start into. This bit's dull. Fingers crossed. Bingo. Like I say, that's the easiest way I've found to do it. Works pretty good. Usually you can get away with one screw. So now the fun part is getting those new seals in there, because the casing is rubber coated. But get the oil cleaned out of there real quick. Alright, so new seal, the casing's rubber coated, makes them really fun to try to get in. I greased the outside of it, got grease on the rock shaft. Hopefully the grease on the rubber will make it a little more slickery. One of these days I really need to make... Oh, well, the grease on that thing makes that... This is the first time I've tried greasing it, and that makes a big difference. One of these days I actually need to make a seal driver for doing this that'll actually slip over. But for the sake of getting things done, we're just gonna... What can we use? That'll work. They're a stout seal, so you're gonna have to work really hard and screw up really bad to bend one. But once you get it in flush, you can switch over. Where is, apparently I don't have it out yet. Because you just drive it back in the bore until it bottoms out. About like so. And part of the reason I think the one that was in it was leaking is because it was actually in there cockeyed. It was driven in flush out here, driven in all the way up here at the top, and it was out flush with the end of the casting at the bottom. Kind of hard for a seal to seal when it's... So, that's done. That went better than I thought it would. Alright, rock shaft arms back on. And I seized the splines before I put it back on, just for safe measure. PTO levers back on. It had 1 3/4 bolts in it. I put 2-inch bolts in it, and I added flat washers, which it probably needed to begin with, to help take some of the rock out of it. And they tightened up good. So hopefully that solves that problem. Now for putting or hooking the hydraulic line back up. The pipe nipple that was in here was 6 inches long, which put the fitting really close to not being able, and actually now that this thing's tight, you might not actually be able to turn the fitting back on it, because you have to get the fitting on and off, and it was why somebody had this thing backed off, as they might have had to change that fitting at some point, and they needed to rock it. But anyway, really tight getting the 90-degree fitting back on the end to hook the hose up, and the one that came out of it was actually bent to begin with, which made it really hard to take in or take out. So making a new nipple, making it 1 inch longer, so it's gonna be a 7-inch nipple instead of a 6. So I got the old pony threader out. This thing scares the shit out of me. That was made back when power tools were power. 1/2-inch pipe, it ain't bad, but I think I did a 2-inch pipe one time for an exhaust, and Dad had to do it because I physically was not heavy enough to, it was just throwing me all over the place because I just was not heavy enough to run it. But this should be okay. Should be. This vise ain't quite small enough for a 1/2-inch pipe. Okay, should be good right there. And this side was already done when I found the pipe down in the rack. That's why I used it, so I only had to thread one side. So clean that up, and that should do the job. Alright, that's all back together. 7 inches worked out perfect. It got everything out clear of the end of that PTO lever. So Did have to take the flat washer out from under that bolt though, because it picked the head of the bolt up just enough that the pipe wouldn't go in. It would start crooked. So can't put a flat washer there, but there's one on the front bolt. So, and we're ready to put the top cover back on. I replaced all the O-rings on the little port adapters, nubbins, whatever you want to call them. So all new O-rings on those. They're back in. Gaskets on. Permatext on both sides. So all we got to do is set the cover back on, which tends to be easier said than done, because you gotta balance the levers and do all sorts of fun stuff all at one time without smashing your fingers. That one didn't quite make it. Okay, I think we're on. You just gotta get it over them O-rings now. Okay, that one started. Okay, no, it's not. That one started. That one started. Okay, now we're good. As far as the levers lining up, they're never really 100% perfect to begin with, but it's better than it was when we started. That washer that goes on the pinch bolt that acts as the key that keys the levers to the shaft on the small shaft, the one that runs the outside lever, the key slot is washed out. So the washer rocks in there, which is why it was able to slip. There's only two fixes to that. A, you just get a different lever with a good slot, which would be the easiest way. Or B, you remachine or weld the key slot shut and remachine it, which the issue with that comes in at because obviously the key slot is timed to get the lever in the right position and to get the fork in the right position, so everything's timed right. So you would almost have to figure out which side of the key slot is still good, if either side of it is still good. And you would almost have to make up a jig to hold the lever before you go welding the key slot shut, so that once the key slot is welded shut, you can put the lever back in the jig and put the key slot back on position. So probably just easier to find a different lever, but that being said, it's not, other than being slightly annoying because the levers would be it's really not that huge of a deal because it's not like anything's gonna break. So All right, everything appears to be in order. The 3-point's hooked back up, so all I got to do is put the bolts back in, and then everything else can go back on. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and speed run the rest of this on my own. Get that all bolted back together. I did some measuring. I think I can sneak this arm off without pulling this fender. I think it's going to be close. I'm like a 1/4 inch shy, but hopefully I'll get it close enough to the end that I can walk it off like that, so I don't have to pull this fender. And I'm going to change the oil, change the hydraulic filter since the reservoir's drained, and she'll be serviced and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get all that out of the way off camera, and then we'll catch you guys when we're ready to pull her back out of the shop, hopefully here in a couple hours. All right, engine oil is changed. Hydraulic oils went back in it. I changed the hydraulic oil filter. Checked the one on the 3-speed, checked the coolant, changed the fuel filters. Air filters are clean. Everything's back together that I know of. I don't see any parts laying around. So we're ready for our test fire. The seat is not in the right spot. Is that the right spot? One more. That's better. Okay. It's gonna run a little goofy because I had them filters, or change the fuel filters. Obviously. I figured it'd chatter more than that. Huh. How about the steering? Tried putting a different washer, tried making a new washer for it. It just likes to be difficult. It doesn't leak like leak. It like just leaks just ever so much. Nothing leaking there. Anything leaking in the hydraulics. No oil there, nothing there, nothing there, nothing there. Rock shaft's not leaking. Gotta put my light wires back up. I just noticed that. That would make it look goofy. No leaks, that's always a good sign. Other than that filter housing bolt. bit. Shut her back down and let her sit for a minute. And recheck all my levels, and the T should be good to go. Oh, and hook my light wires back up before I forget. Alright, everything's topped off, everything looked good. So she can leave. Brakes do, huh? Well, I can lock that tire up. The other tire up. Almost. The sounds of dry brakes. So, anyhow, one more tractor knocked off the list. Put the stacks back on it, put it back in the barn, and I can run it home tomorrow afternoon. So, if I had the duals on it, I'd use it to spread a little bit of lime and run it a little bit, but I don't have the duals on. I don't want to try to spread that lime tomorrow, so we'll use a 55. But anyhow, there's success. So with that being said, that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.